how does the ECB in December square that circle?
Well, the ECB will have to decide what to do about its quantitative easing program. Now, these latest data may change things a little bit because, for example, the GDP growth was 1/2 of what had been projected. So the ECB will now have to go back to the drawing board to see exactly what it wants to do.
Sometimes these get revised. Kevin, is there any possibility that these figures might get revised for the much better?
Well, yes, the figures can be revised. Usually, however, they still stay around the same that was the preliminary reading. So probably no great jump forward, for example, in the euro area number.
I think what's worth pointing out, Kevin, and I'd be curious to get your take on this. So the eurozone economy is delivering these kinds of numbers with a very cheap euro, with still exceptional stimulus being generated out of the ECB. If it can't perform now, my question really is, how can the eurozone economy survive without one of those two factors if this is all it can produce when it has them?
Well, that's the dilemma facing ECB President Mario Draghi and the other members of the Governing Council. Now, they will really have to look at things, and they'll also have to take into account the possibility of a slowdown in global trade that will get them quite worried. And, of course, the noises coming from the Trump administration in Washington probably are not making things any easier for the ECB.
What does the Italian government do now, Kevin? I mean, stagnant growth in Italy is no good thing if you want to spend more.
Exactly. Now, the Italian government, after this morning's GDP release, dug in its heels. Now, that's a term that I've been using quite a bit, but that's exactly what they are doing. Even though the GDP registered no change in the third quarter, a lot of economists are saying that's bad news. They really are not sure what's going to go on from here. But the government says they're going forward with their plans and there won't be any changes.
Kevin, the problem with the Italian budget is that it assumes a reasonably optimistic level of growth that is going to be generated by the Italian economy. If I take a look at the data that are being produced out of the Italian economy, I'm having to be very skeptical of those numbers. And if I'm skeptical of those numbers, the equation simply doesn't work when it comes to the debt to GDP numbers. Is today, therefore, a significant blow in terms of the budget debate?
Well, plenty of people have pointed out the discrepancy in those numbers, saying that if Italy really does want 1.5% growth next year, it better get on the move. And that move is really just not happening. Now, the numbers today, the unchanged for the GDP, really will probably give a lot of pause for thought for a lot of analysts looking at this, and they may become more pessimistic.
So what happens, Kevin? How is Italy supposed to grow without any investment? And how is the investment supposed to come without any spending? And where are the bond buyers going to come from? The debt auctions have not been pleasant.
Well, that's what the government says it is doing, is having an expansionary budget that will encourage growth, will encourage investment. Now, the government has acknowledged now and then that this is a bet. It's a gamble that by having a more expansive policy that they will spur growth. Now, the problem is that a lot of experts say that that probably will not happen.